On February 2022, in Indianapolis, I stood at the kitchen counter sorting mail while the snow on the deck melted into a gray line. My husband was in his office, taking a call, and he said he couldn't move. Our daughter, 39, had just started therapy for compulsive sexual behavior. We told no one. That afternoon, a prayer request email from our church circle landed in my inbox. My daughter's first name, the word addiction, and a line about temptation. The message had been forwarded 5 times by people who should have known better. I didn't reply. I printed it, slid it into a manila folder, and made tea. Sometimes privacy breaks with a whisper, not a shout. I remember the sound of the kettle, that faint, steady tremor, while I wrote the date on the envelope and told myself, collect, then decide. Marian Holt had been a teacher for 23 years before she retired. She taught 5th grade at Washington Elementary School on the east side of Indianapolis, where the hallways smelled like floor wax and the copy machine jammed every Thursday afternoon. She knew how to keep a classroom of 30 children quiet without raising her voice. She knew how to watch for patterns: who copied whose homework, who ate lunch alone in the corner of the cafeteria, who needed a Band-Aid but wouldn't ask because they didn't want attention. That same careful attention to detail, that same ability to observe and document without rushing to judgment, followed her home when she left the school building for the last time at 50, carrying a cardboard box with a coffee mug that said "World's Best Teacher" and a desk calendar she never filled in because she preferred to keep track of things in her own notebooks. By 52, she had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Her days were structured, but not rigid. She woke at 6:30 each morning, made coffee in the same blue pot she had used for 15 years, and sat at the kitchen table reading the newspaper while Daniel got ready for work upstairs. She liked the quiet of those early hours, the way the house held its breath before the day began. She would read the local news first, then the national headlines, then the editorials if she had time. By 7:45, Daniel would come downstairs wearing a suit and tie, pour himself a travel mug of coffee, kiss her on the forehead, and leave for the office. Daniel worked as an accountant for a mid-sized firm downtown called Hartwell and Associates. It was the kind of place where everyone wore business attire and kept their office doors half closed to signal they were busy but available. He had been with the firm for 18 years, working his way up from junior accountant to senior associate. He handled estate planning and tax preparation for small business owners and retirees. He was methodical and reliable. People trusted him with their financial lives because he never made promises he couldn't keep and never missed a deadline. They had been married for 30 years. They met in college at Indiana University, both studying in the education building during finals week. Marian was working on a paper about childhood literacy. Daniel was there because the library was too crowded and he needed a quiet place to study for his economics exam. They started talking during a vending machine malfunction. Her dollar kept getting rejected, and he had changed. They got married 2 years after graduation in a small ceremony at a church in Bloomington, with 20 guests and a reception in the church basement where Marian's mother served punch and homemade cookies. They lived in a 3-bedroom ranch house in a subdivision called Meadowbrook Estates. It was built in 1987, the year they bought it. The house had beige siding, a 2-car garage, and a fenced backyard with a deck that needed staining every few years, but never seemed to get done. The neighborhood was quiet and aging. Most of their neighbors were original buyers like them, people in their 50s and 60s whose children had grown and moved away. Everyone kept their lawns mowed and their garbage cans out of sight. It was the kind of place where people waved from their driveways but rarely stopped to talk for long. Their daughter Ava lived alone in a 1-bedroom apartment on the north side of the city, about 12 minutes away by car. She was 39 years old, unmarried, and worked as a project manager for a software company called Integrated Solutions. She had been with the company for 7 years, managing teams that developed customer relationship management tools for healthcare providers. She was good at her job, organized, calm under pressure, skilled at translating technical requirements into language that clients could understand. She made a decent salary and lived within her means. She drove a used Honda Accord and shopped at Target. She kept her personal life private, even from her parents. Marian respected that. She didn't ask too many questions. She didn't pry into Ava's dating life or her social calendar. She waited for the phone to ring and trusted that Ava would reach out when she needed something. It was a Tuesday afternoon in early February when the call came. Marian was in the kitchen, standing at the counter cutting vegetables for soup. The radio was on low, playing classical music. The dog, a golden retriever named Cooper, was lying on his bed near the back door, half asleep. The light through the window was pale and cold. Snow had been falling on and off for 3 days, not enough to accumulate much, but enough to make everything look gray and tired. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Ava's name appeared on the screen. Marian wiped her hands on a dish towel and answered. "Hi, sweetheart." "Hi, Mom." Ava's voice was steady but thin, like a wire pulled tight. "How are you?" "I'm okay. I need to tell you something." Marian set down the knife and leaned against the counter. "Go ahead." "I started therapy." "Okay. It's for something specific." Marian waited. She didn't fill the silence. She had learned over the years that sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply not speak. "Compulsive sexual behavior," Ava said quietly. "The clinic specializes in it." Marian felt her chest tighten, but her voice stayed calm. "Are you safe?" "Yes." "Do you need anything?" "Not yet." "Do you want to talk about it?" "Not really. I just needed to tell you." They spoke for 7 more minutes. Ava explained that she had found the clinic through her insurance directory. She had called the intake line, filled out paperwork online, and attended her first session the previous Thursday. The therapist was a woman in her 50s named Dr. Lee Patterson. The session had been difficult. Ava had cried twice, but she felt like it was the right place. She had another appointment scheduled for the following week. She didn't want anyone to know. Not friends. Not coworkers. Not anyone at church. "I understand," Marian said. "I just needed to tell you and Dad." "I'm glad you did." "Can you tell him?" "I don't want to have the conversation twice." "Of course." "Thanks, Mom. I love you." "I love you too." When they hung up, Marian stood in the kitchen for a long time. The soup pot was still on the stove, the vegetables half chopped on the cutting board. The dog lifted his head and looked at her, then settled back down. The classical music played on, something slow and somber with strings. She thought about Ava sitting in her apartment right now, probably on the couch, probably wondering if she had done the right thing by calling. She thought about how much courage it took to say those words out loud. She thought about how alone her daughter must have felt for however long this had been going on before she finally decided to get help. She picked up the knife and finished cutting the vegetables. Then she turned off the stove, covered the pot, and went upstairs. Daniel was in his home office, sitting at his desk with his laptop open and a stack of folders beside him. He was wearing reading glasses and a sweater vest over a button-down shirt. The room smelled like coffee and paper. He looked up when she came in. "Hey," he said. "Everything okay?" Ava called. He took off his glasses. "What's wrong?" Marian sat down in the chair across from his desk. She told him everything Ava had said, word for word, keeping her voice level and factual. Daniel listened without interrupting. When she finished, he set his glasses on the desk and rubbed his eyes. "Is she okay?" he asked. "She says she is." "Do we need to do anything?" "Not right now." He nodded slowly. "She doesn't want anyone to know." "Right. Then we keep it between us." "Yes." They sat together in the quiet office for a moment. The heat kicked on, and the vent above them made a soft rattling sound. Outside, the sky was darkening. The snow had stopped, but the air looked heavy, like more was coming. "She'll be okay," Daniel said finally. "I think so too." Marian stood up and went back downstairs. She turned the stove back on and finished making the soup. She set the table for 2 and poured water into glasses. When Daniel came down at 6, they ate dinner together in near silence. The only sound was the scrape of spoons against bowls and the tick of the clock on the wall. Cooper lay under the table, his tail occasionally thumping against the floor. Neither of them turned on the television. Neither of them spoke about Ava again that night. They just sat with the knowledge, holding it carefully, the way you hold something fragile that might break if you grip it too hard. The email arrived 4 days later. It was Saturday afternoon, February 19th. Marian had been sorting through the mail, bills, catalogs, a postcard from a realtor they didn't know. Daniel was upstairs napping. Cooper was outside in the backyard, sniffing along the fence line. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the floorboard settling. Marian's laptop was open on the kitchen table. She had been checking her email, deleting spam, and responding to a message from her former teaching colleague about a book club meeting. Then a new message appeared in her inbox. The subject line read, "Covering her with prayer." The sender was Janet Kay, who managed the women's ministry email list at Crossroads Community Church. Janet was 49, energetic and well-meaning, but sometimes careless with details. She kept spreadsheets for meal trains when someone had surgery or a new baby. She organized the annual Christmas cookie exchange and the spring women's retreat. She sent out weekly prayer requests and announcements about upcoming events. She had been doing this for 6 years, ever since the previous coordinator moved out of state. Marian opened the email. It was short, maybe 8 lines. It began with "Dear Sisters in Christ," and then listed Ava's first name. It said she was struggling with addiction and seeking help for sexual struggles. It asked recipients to cover her in prayer and to lift her up as she battles temptation. It ended with, "In his love, Janet." Marian's stomach dropped. She read the message again, more slowly this time, making sure she understood exactly what she was seeing. Then she scrolled to the top of the email to check the recipient list. There were 15 addresses in the to field, all visible. No blind copy. She recognized most of the names: women from the Sunday morning service, members of the choir, volunteers from the hospitality committee. 2 more addresses were in the CC field. One of them belonged to Linda, the woman who taught Sunday school and ran the hospitality committee. The other belonged to a deacon's wife named Carol. Marian sat back in her chair. Her hands were shaking slightly. She set them flat on the table and took a slow breath. The email had been sent at 1:47 in the afternoon. It was now 2:33. Already there was one reply in the thread. Carol had written, "Is this the kind of counseling that falls under immorality support? Just want to know how to pray specifically." Marian closed her eyes for a moment. Then she opened them and got to work. First, she saved the email as a PDF. She opened the print dialog, selected Save as PDF instead of printing to paper, and saved the file to a folder on her desktop that she created and named Documentation. She labeled the file, Email 1, February 19. Next, she forwarded the email to a private Gmail account she had created years earlier. It was an account only she had access to, something she had set up when she was still teaching and wanted a place to store personal documents separate from her school email. She rarely used it, but it was still active. The address was simple, marian.holt.archive@gmail.com. She forwarded the email without adding any text, preserving the original headers and metadata. Then she printed a hard copy. She used the 3-hole punch they kept in the office supply drawer and punched the pages. She took a manila folder from the filing cabinet, opened it flat on the table, and placed the printed email inside. On the folder tab, she wrote the date in black ink, February 19, 2022. Then she set the folder aside and made tea. She filled the kettle with water and set it on the stove. She turned the burner too high and stood there watching it, listening to the faint hiss as the water began to heat. The kettle was old, white enamel with a red handle, bought at a garage sale 20 years ago. It had a small dent on one side and a chip near the spout, but it still worked perfectly. She liked the sound it made when the water was almost ready, that faint, steady tremor that built into a whistle. While she waited, she thought about what to do next. Her first instinct was to call Ava immediately, but she stopped herself. Ava was probably at work or running errands. She might be in a store or driving. A phone call about this would feel like an ambush, and Marian didn't want to do that. She would wait until evening, when Ava was home and settled. The kettle began to whistle. Marian poured the hot water over a tea bag in her favorite mug, the blue one with a crack along the handle that she kept meaning to replace but never did. She added 1 spoonful of sugar and stirred slowly, watching the tea darken. Then she carried the mug to the table, sat down, and opened her laptop again. She logged into Ava's patient portal. Ava had given her access during their phone call on Tuesday. She had set up Marian as an authorized user so that someone could handle appointment reminders or billing questions if Ava was traveling for work or unreachable. The login credentials were saved in Marian's password manager. She entered them now and waited for the page to load. The portal homepage appeared. At the top was a banner with the clinic's name, Center for Sexual Health and Recovery. Below that was a menu bar with tabs for appointments, messages, billing, and resources. In the center of the page was a large graphic advertisement for telehealth services for sexual health, convenient, confidential, and available now. Marian took a screenshot. She made sure the time in the corner of her laptop screen was visible, 2:41 p.m. Then she saved the screenshot to the documentation folder. She clicked through the rest of the portal, looking for anything else that might be relevant. The Appointments tab showed Ava's upcoming session scheduled for Thursday, February 24th at 4 p.m. The appointment reminder listed the date, time, and location. It also included a subject line that would be used for email reminders, Appointment at Center for Sexual Health and Recovery. Marian took another screenshot. She closed the laptop and sat with her tea for a while, thinking. The dog scratched at the back door. She got up and let him in. He trotted over to his water bowl, drank noisily, then collapsed on his bed with a sigh. The house settled back into silence. Upstairs, she could hear Daniel moving around. A door opened and closed. Water ran in the bathroom. She heard his footsteps on the stairs, and then he appeared in the kitchen doorway, his hair sticking up on one side, his face creased from the pillow. "Hey," he said, yawning. "What time is it?" "Almost 3. I slept that long. You needed it." He poured himself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. "What have you been up to?" Marian gestured to the laptop. "Come here. I need to show you something." Daniel set down his glass and came over. Marian opened the laptop and pulled up the email. She didn't say anything. She just let him read. His expression changed slowly as he took in the words. His jaw tightened. He scrolled to the top to see the recipient list. Then he scrolled back down and read Carol's reply. "Who sent this?" he asked quietly. "Janet K." "Who's on the list?" 17 people. Probably more by now. He stood there for a moment, his hands on the back of the chair, staring at the screen. Then he straightened up and looked at Marian. "Does Ava know?" "Not yet." "When are you going to tell her?" "Tonight." He nodded. "What do you want to do about this?" "I'm not sure yet." "Do you want me to handle it?" "No. I'll handle it." "Okay," he paused. "I'll back your plan." "I know." He left the kitchen and went back upstairs. Marian heard the shower turn on. She sat at the table with her tea and stared at the manila folder. The folder was thin now, just one document inside, but she had a feeling it would get thicker. She had a feeling this was just the beginning. By evening, the email chain had grown. Marian checked her inbox at 6 p.m. and found 2 more messages in the thread. One was from a woman named Susan, who had replied to all with a link to a Christian recovery program and a note saying, "This might help." The other was from Linda, the Sunday school teacher, who had written, "Adding this to our Sunday intercessory list. Praying for strength and healing." Marian saved both emails as PDFs and added them to the folder. At 7, she called Ava. The phone rang 3 times before Ava answered. There was music in the background, something soft and instrumental. Ava's voice was calm but cautious. "Hi, Mom." "Hi. Are you home?" "Yeah. Just got back from the grocery store. Do you have a minute?" "Sure. What's up?" Marian took a breath. "People know." There was silence on the other end. The music continued in the background. Marian waited. "How?" Ava asked finally. Her voice was still steady, but there was an edge to it now, something tight and controlled. "Church email. Janet sent out a prayer request." "With my name?" "Yes." Another pause. Marian heard Ava exhale slowly. "What did it say?" "It mentioned addiction. It mentioned sexual struggles. It asked people to pray for you." "How many people saw it?" 17 at first. "Probably more now. There have been replies." Ava didn't say anything for a long time. Marian sat at the kitchen table, the phone pressed to her ear, listening to her daughter breathe. She wanted to say something comforting, something that would make it better, but she knew there was nothing to say. The damage was done. All they could do now was manage it. "I'm sorry," Marian said quietly. "It's not your fault." "I know. But I'm still sorry." "What do we do?" "I'm working on that. I'm documenting everything. I'll handle the logistics." "Do I need to do anything?" "Not yet. Just keep your appointments. Don't engage with anyone who reaches out." "Okay. Do you want to stay with us for a few days?" "No. I'll be fine." "Are you sure?" "Yeah. I just want a quiet week." "Then that's what we'll do." "Thanks, Mom. I love you." "Love you too." They hung up. Marian sat at the table for a while, staring at the phone. Then she got up, took the manila folder from the counter, and went into Daniel's office. He was at his desk, scrolling through something on his laptop. He looked up when she came in. "I talked to her," Marian said. "How is she?" "Handling it." "What's the plan?" "I'm going to document everything. Every email, every message, every contact. I'm going to keep a record. And then I'll figure out what to do with it." Daniel nodded. "What can I do?" "Just back me up. I might need help printing things or organizing files." "You got it." Marian went back downstairs and opened her laptop. She created a new document and titled it Timeline. Then she began typing. February 15, Ava starts therapy at the Center for Sexual Health and Recovery. February 19, 1:47 p.m., Janet K. sends prayer request email to Women's Ministry List, 17 recipients. The email includes Ava's first name, mentions addiction and sexual struggles. February 19, 2:51 p.m., Carol replies asking if this is immorality support. February 19, 6:14 p.m., Susan replies with a link to the recovery program. February 19, 6:28 p.m., Linda replies, adding Ava to Sunday intercessory prayer list. She saved the document and closed the laptop. Then she made dinner. She heated up leftover soup, sliced bread, set the table. When Daniel came down, they ate together in relative silence. The television stayed off. The house was quiet except for the sound of spoons and the occasional shift of Cooper's weight on his bed under the table. After dinner, Marian washed the dishes while Daniel dried. It was a routine they had followed for 30 years. She would wash, he would dry, and they would put everything away together. Tonight they worked without speaking, the rhythm familiar and comforting. When they finished, Daniel folded the dish towel and hung it on the oven handle. "I'm going to watch the news," he said. "Okay, I'll be up in a bit." He went into the living room. Marian stayed in the kitchen. She opened the manila folder and looked at the printed email again, reading every word carefully. She studied the recipient list, the subject line, the timestamp. She thought about how careless it was, how easily this could have been avoided with a simple blind copy. She thought about Janet, who probably meant well but hadn't stopped to think about what she was doing. She thought about Carol's reply, the way it turned Ava's private struggle into a theological question. She thought about how sometimes people hurt you without meaning to, and how that doesn't make the hurt any less real. She closed the folder and went upstairs. She brushed her teeth, changed into pajamas, and got into bed. Daniel was already there, reading a book with his glasses on. She turned off her lamp and lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. The house creaked. The heat kicked on. She heard a car pass on the street outside, its headlights briefly washing across the bedroom wall. "You okay?" Daniel asked without looking up from his book. "Yeah," she said. "I'm okay." But she wasn't, not really. She was thinking about Ava, alone in her apartment, probably lying in her own bed, probably wondering who had seen the email and who would bring it up and how her life had just become a little bit smaller. She was thinking about how privacy, once broken, can never be fully restored. She was thinking about how she was going to fix this, or at least try to. She fell asleep sometime after 11, and she dreamed about filing cabinets and manila folders and documents that kept multiplying no matter how many she put away. Sunday morning came with pale light and cold air. Marian woke at 6:30, her usual time. Daniel was still asleep beside her, breathing deeply. She got up quietly, pulled on her robe, and went downstairs. She made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with the newspaper, but she couldn't focus on the words. Her mind kept circling back to the email, to Ava, to what might happen at church today. They always attended the 10 a.m. service. It was a mid-sized congregation, about 200 people on a typical Sunday. They had been members for 12 years, ever since they moved to this part of Indianapolis. The church was called Crossroads Community Church, and it met in a modern building with a large sanctuary, a fellowship hall, and several classrooms for Sunday school. The pastor was a man in his late 50s named Reverend Michael Thompson. He was a good speaker, thoughtful and measured, and he tended to avoid controversial topics in his sermons, preferring instead to focus on themes of grace and community. Marian and Daniel always sat in the back, near the side aisle. It was a practical choice. If Daniel got a work call, he could slip out without disturbing anyone. If the sermon ran long and Marian needed to use the restroom, she could leave discreetly. They liked being able to see the whole room, to observe without being observed. This morning, as they pulled into the parking lot at 9:50, Marian felt her chest tighten. She took a breath and reminded herself to stay calm. They got out of the car and walked toward the entrance. Several people were standing near the doors, chatting before the service started. Marian recognized most of them. She nodded and smiled as they passed, but no one stopped them to talk. Inside, the sanctuary was filling up. They made their way to their usual spot in the back row. Marian set her purse on the floor and sat down. Daniel sat beside her, adjusting his tie. The organist was playing quietly, something classical and soothing. People filed in, talking in low voices, finding their seats. At 9:58, Linda walked past their row. She was wearing a cream-colored dress and carrying a Bible with a floral cover. She saw Marian and stopped. Her face brightened with a smile that was a little too wide, a little too warm. "Marian," she said, tilting her head slightly. "Daniel. How are you both?" "We're well," Marian said evenly. "That's so good to hear." Linda's smile didn't waver. "How's your family? Everyone healthy?" "Yes. That's wonderful." "Just wonderful." She paused, her eyes searching Marian's face. "You know we're praying for you. For all of you." "Thank you." Linda squeezed Marian's hand, held it for a beat too long, then released it. "Have a blessed service." She walked away, her heels clicking on the tile floor. Marian sat very still. Daniel leaned over and whispered, "That was deliberate." "I know." The service began at 10. Reverend Thompson welcomed everyone, led them in an opening prayer, and introduced the first hymn. Marian stood with the rest of the congregation and sang along, but her mind was elsewhere. She was watching the people around her, wondering who had seen the email, who had replied, who was praying for Ava right now with half the story and a heavy dose of judgment. During the announcements, Reverend Thompson mentioned the upcoming women's retreat and the youth group fundraiser. He thanked the volunteers who had helped with the recent winter coat drive. He asked for prayers for several members who were dealing with health issues. He didn't mention Ava by name, but Marian felt like he might as well have. She felt the weight of unspoken knowledge pressing down on her, the sense that everyone knew something they shouldn't. The sermon was about forgiveness. Reverend Thompson talked about the parable of the prodigal son, about grace and second chances. Marian tried to listen, but the words slid past her. She kept thinking about the email, about the way it had turned Ava's private pain into public prayer. She thought about how violating it was, how deeply wrong. After the service, people stood and gathered their things. Some lingered to chat. Others headed straight for the doors. Marian and Daniel stayed in their seats for a moment, waiting for the crowd to thin. Then they stood and walked toward the exit. Near the door, a woman named Beth stopped them. She was in her early 60s, with short gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses. She led the choir and organized the Christmas pageant every year. She was friendly and well-meaning, the kind of person who remembered everyone's birthday. "Marian, Daniel," she said warmly. "Good to see you." "You too," Marian said. "How have you been?" "Fine. Busy." "I can imagine," Beth smiled. "How's Ava doing?" There it was. The question hung in the air for a moment. Marian kept her face neutral. She's well. Working hard. That's good. I'm so glad to hear it. Beth touched Marian's arm lightly. Please let her know we're thinking of her. I will. They said goodbye and walked to the car. Neither of them spoke until they were inside with the doors closed. Daniel started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot. Everyone knows, he said quietly. Yes. What do we do? We keep documenting. That afternoon, Marian checked the church's group text platform. It was an app called Church Connect, used by the congregation for announcements and prayer requests. Members could post messages, reply to threads, and send direct messages to other members. Marian had downloaded it when they first joined the church, but she rarely used it. She preferred email or face-to-face conversation. Now she opened the app and scrolled through the recent posts. The feed was full of the usual things: reminders about upcoming events, thank you messages for volunteers, requests for prayers for sick relatives. Then she saw it. The post was from 3 days ago, Thursday, February 17th. It was marked confidential with a small lock icon. The text read, "Please pray for Marian Holt as she seeks help for addiction and personal struggles. Let's cover her in grace." The name was misspelled, ABA instead of Ava. The post had been liked by 11 people. 3 people had replied with praying hands emojis. 1 person had replied with a heart. Marian took a screenshot. Then she opened the app's settings to see if there was a way to export the thread. She found an archive feature that allowed users to request a downloadable copy of their activity. She filled out the form, requesting a transcript of all group text posts for the past 30 days. The system said the file would be ready in 48 hours and would cost $15. Marian entered her credit card information and submitted the request. She saved the confirmation email. She added a new tab to the Manila folder and labeled it Group Text. That evening, Ava called. It was just after 7. Marian was in the kitchen, putting away dishes from dinner. Daniel was in the living room, watching a basketball game on television. The phone rang and Marian dried her hands on a dish towel before answering. "Hi, sweetheart." "Hi, Mom." Ava's voice sounded tired. "How was your weekend?" "Okay." "Quiet." "Did you go anywhere?" "Just to the store." "I stayed in mostly." "That's probably smart." "Yeah." There was a pause. "Did you go to church?" "We did." "How was it?" Marian hesitated. She didn't want to lie, but she also didn't want to make things worse. People were friendly. "Did anyone say anything?" "A few people asked how you were doing." I kept it vague. "Okay." They talked for a few more minutes about nothing in particular. Ava mentioned that she had finished a book she'd been reading. Marian mentioned that Cooper had found a dead bird in the backyard and brought it to the door as a gift. They both laughed at that, a small moment of normalcy in an otherwise heavy conversation. "I have my next appointment on Thursday," Ava said. "Do you feel good about it?" "Yeah, I think so." "Good." "Mom?" "Yes. Thank you for handling this." "You don't need to thank me." "I do. I don't know what I'd do without you." Marian's throat tightened. "You'd figure it out. But you don't have to." "I know." They said goodbye and hung up. Marian stood in the kitchen, holding the phone, staring out the window at the backyard. The snow had melted in patches, leaving the grass brown and muddy. The deck was still gray and weathered. The fence needed a coat of paint. Everything looked tired. She put the phone down and went back to the dishes. Monday morning brought a new complication. Marian was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop, checking her email, when her phone rang. The caller ID showed a local number she didn't recognize. She answered cautiously. "Hello." "Hi, is this Marian Holt?" a cheerful female voice asked. "Yes. This is Brenda calling from the Center for Sexual Health and Recovery. I'm calling with a reminder for Ava Holt. She has an appointment on Thursday, February 24th at 4 p.m. Marian's grip on the phone tightened. "I'm sorry, can you repeat that?" "Sure. This is a reminder call for Ava Holt's appointment on Thursday at 4 p.m. for sex addiction therapy. If she needs to reschedule, please call us at 555-8776. Marian closed her eyes. She took a slow breath. "Thank you for calling. Can you make a note on Ava's account?" "Of course. What would you like me to add?" Please send all future reminders by email only. And can you use a neutral subject line? Something generic, like appointment reminder. Oh, sure. I can do that. Also, when you leave voicemails, can you avoid mentioning the specific service? There was a pause. I'm not sure what you mean. You just said sex addiction therapy on the voicemail. That's not necessary. You can just say appointment. Oh, I see. I didn't actually leave a voicemail. This is a live call. I understand. But if you do need to leave a voicemail in the future, please keep it general. Okay, I'll make a note. Thank you. Is there anything else I can help with? No, that's all. Great. Have a good day. Marian hung up. She immediately checked her phone to see if the call had been recorded. It hadn't, but she noted the time, 10:48 a.m. She opened a new document on her laptop and typed. February 21, 10:48 a.m. Received phone call from Brenda at Center for Sexual Health and Recovery. Voicemail system disclosed specific service type, sex addiction therapy in reminder call. Requested neutral language for future communications. The receptionist agreed to make a note on account. She saved the document and printed it. Then she added it to the manila folder. That afternoon, she called the clinic. She used the main number listed on their website and asked to speak with the office manager. She was put on hold. Soft piano music played in a loop, something bland and soothing, the kind of music designed to make you forget you were waiting. After 4 minutes, a woman's voice came on the line. This is Diane. How can I help you? Hi, Diane. My name is Marian Holt. I'm calling about your communication protocols. Okay. What specifically? I received a phone call this morning with an appointment reminder for my daughter. The caller mentioned the specific service type. I'd like to request that future reminders use more neutral language. I see. What's the account name? Ava Holt. Let me pull that up. There was the sound of typing. Okay, I've got it. So you're saying the reminder was too specific? Yes. The caller said sex addiction therapy on a live call. That's not discreet. I understand. I can add a note to the account. Can you also review your vendor's email templates? I received an email from BetterPath that included sexual health services in the subject line. That's also too specific. Diane paused. We've never had a complaint about that before. You have one now. Okay. I'll need to check with our vendor. It might take a few days to update the templates. How long? I'm not sure. I'll have to circle back with the team. Can you give me a timeline? Not right now. I'll make a note and follow up. When will you follow up? I'll try to get back to you by the end of the week. Can you take down my contact information? Sure, more typing. What's the best number to reach you? Marian gave her the number. And can you email me as well? I'd like documentation of our conversation. I can do that. Thank you. Is there anything else? Not right now. Okay, I'll be in touch. They hung up. Marian noted the time, 3:12 p.m. She typed up a summary of the conversation and added it to the folder. She wrote down Diane's name and the phrase, "We'll circle back, no timeline given." Then she opened the clinic's website and looked for their privacy policies. She scrolled to the bottom of the homepage and found a link labeled Notice of Privacy Practices. She clicked it. A PDF opened, 12 pages long. She began reading. The document was dense, full of legal language and regulatory citations. It explained patients' rights, the clinic's obligations, and the procedures for handling protected health information. On page 7, Marian found the section titled Communications. It read, "We will use and disclose only the minimum necessary information in appointment reminders, billing notices, and other communications. Patients have the right to request restrictions on how we communicate with them." Marian read that sentence 3 times. Then she highlighted it with a yellow marker on her screen. She printed the entire document, all 12 pages, and added it to the manila folder under a new tab labeled Policy. That evening, Daniel asked how her day had been. "Productive," Marian said. They were sitting at the dinner table, eating chicken and roasted vegetables. The television was off. The house was quiet. "What did you do?" "Called the clinic. Documented the call. Downloaded their privacy policy." "Find anything useful?" "Yes. They're supposed to use minimum necessary information in communications. They're not doing that. What's next? I keep building the file. Then I figure out what to do with it. Daniel nodded. He ate in silence for a while, then looked up. You're going to take this somewhere, aren't you? Maybe. Where? I don't know yet. But I want to be ready. I'll back you up. I know. They finished dinner and cleaned up together. Marian washed, Daniel dried. It was the same routine, comforting in its predictability. When they were done, Daniel went to watch the news. Marian stayed in the kitchen and opened her laptop. She started building a more detailed timeline. She used a spreadsheet this time, with columns for date, time, event, source, and policy reference. She filled in everything she had documented so far. February 15, Ava begins therapy at the Center for Sexual Health and Recovery. February 19, 1:47 p.m., Janet K. sends prayer request email to Women's Ministry List. 17 recipients. Includes Ava's first name, mentions addiction and sexual struggles source, email. Policy. Church communications policy requiring consent. February 19, 2:51 p.m., Carol replies asking if this is immorality support source, email. February 19, 6:14 p.m., Susan replies with a link to the recovery program. Source, email. February 19, 6:28 p.m., Linda replies, adding Ava to Sunday intercessory prayer list. Source, email. February 17, group text post on Church Connect app. Misspelled name, ABA. Marked confidential, but visible to all members. 11 likes, 3 replies. Source, screenshot. Policy. Church communications policy requiring consent. February 21, 10:48 a.m., phone call from clinic receptionist, Brenda. Disclose service type in live call. Source, phone log. Policy, minimum necessary standard in Notice of Privacy Practices, page 7. February 21, 3:12 p.m., call to office manager, Diane. Requested neutral language and review of vendor templates. The manager promised to circle back, but gave no timeline. Source, call log. Policy, minimum necessary standard. Marian saved the spreadsheet and printed it. She taped it to the inside cover of the manila folder, where she could see it at a glance. Then she closed the laptop and went upstairs. She got ready for bed, moving through the familiar routine, brushing her teeth, washing her face, changing into pajamas. Daniel was already in bed, reading a book about the history of baseball. She climbed in beside him and turned off her lamp. "Good night," he said without looking up. "Good night." She lay in the dark, listening to the house settle. The heat kicked on. A car passed outside. She thought about Ava, about the clinic, about Janet and the church. She thought about how systems were supposed to protect people, not expose them. She thought about how easy it was for someone to make a mistake and how hard it was to fix the damage. She fell asleep thinking about folders and policies and the quiet power of documentation. Tuesday was uneventful. Marian ran errands, grocery shopping, a trip to the post office, a stop at the pharmacy to pick up Daniel's blood pressure medication. She came home, put everything away, and spent the afternoon reading a novel she had started weeks ago. It was a mystery set in Scotland, full of atmosphere and slow reveals. She liked the way the author built tension without rushing, the way clues were dropped carefully and patiently. She thought about how good storytelling was a lot like good documentation. You laid out the facts. You let them speak for themselves. You didn't editorialize or rush to conclusions. You just presented the evidence and let people draw their own conclusions. Wednesday brought another complication. Marian checked her email in the morning and found a new message from the Center for Sexual Health and Recovery. The subject line read, "Your Better Path subscription renewal, sexual health services." She opened the email. It was an automated message from the clinic's scheduling vendor, BetterPath. The message thanked Ava for using their services and reminded her that her subscription would renew automatically in 30 days. It included an upsell for additional services, expand your care with telehealth for sexual health convenient, confidential, and available now. Marian stared at the screen. The subject line alone was a problem. It disclosed the service type to anyone who might see the inbox: a coworker glancing over a shoulder, a family member using a shared computer, a partner who had access to the email account. It was careless and unnecessary. She took 3 screenshots, one of the full email, one of the subject line with the timestamp visible, and one of the upsell text. She made sure her laptop's clock was visible in the corner of each screenshot, 9:23 a.m. Then she forwarded the email to Ava with a simple message: "Can you forward this to me from your account? I need the original headers." Ava replied within 10 minutes. "Done." "Is this a problem?" "Yes. I'm handling it." Marian saved all the screenshots to her documentation folder. Then she opened the email from Ava, copied the full headers, and saved them in a text file. The headers would show the exact path the email had taken, the servers it had passed through, and the time it was sent. If she ever needed to prove the sequence of events, the headers would be critical. She printed everything and added it to the folder under a new tab, Vendor. That afternoon, she called the clinic again and asked for Diane. "This is Diane." "Hi, Diane. This is Marian Holt. We spoke on Monday about communication protocols." "Oh, yes. Hi, Marian. I was going to call you back. I'm calling because I received another email from your vendor. The subject line discloses the service type. It says sexual health services." "Oh, I see. This is the same issue I raised on Monday. The subject lines need to be neutral." "Right. I remember. I haven't had a chance to follow up with BetterPath yet. When will you?" "I'm planning to reach out to them this week. Can you give me a specific timeline?" "I'll try to have an answer by Friday." "And will you email me with an update?" "Yes. I'll send you an email." "Thank you. I'd also like to know if there's a way to opt Ava's account out of these vendor emails entirely. I'd have to check. I'm not sure if that's possible. Can you find out?" "Yes. I'll add that to my list." "I appreciate it." They hung up. Marian documented the call: date, time, summary, Diane's promises. She noted that Diane had still not provided a concrete timeline. She added the note to the folder. Then she sat at the kitchen table and thought about what to do next. She was building a strong file. She had emails, screenshots, call logs, policy documents. But what was she building it for? What was her endgame? She didn't know yet. But she knew she needed to be ready for whatever came next. That evening, Ava called with an update. "Hi, Mom. I just wanted to let you know I switched therapists." "Oh, when did that happen?" "Today. I found someone new through my insurance. She's closer to my apartment, and she uses a different system for reminders. They're more discreet." "That's good. How do you feel about the switch?" "It's fine. I had my first session this afternoon." "She seems good. What happened with the other clinic?" "Nothing bad. I just didn't want to deal with their system anymore. Too many issues with privacy." "I understand. Are you comfortable with the new person?" "Yeah. She's older, like late 50s maybe. She's been doing this for a long time. I felt good about it." "I'm glad. Thanks for helping with all this, Mom. I know you've been working on it. It's what I'm supposed to do. Still, I appreciate it." They talked for a few more minutes, then said goodbye. Marian hung up and updated her timeline. She noted that Ava had switched providers on February 23rd. She added a new line: "Issue with clinic communication protocols prompts patients to change providers." She thought about adding that to the file as evidence of harm, but she held off. She wanted to keep the documentation focused on what the clinic and the church had done, not on Ava's response. The facts should speak for themselves. Thursday was Ava's first appointment with the new therapist. Marian didn't call or text. She wanted to give Ava space. That evening, Ava sent a text: "Session went well. Feeling okay?" Marian replied, "Glad to hear it. Love you." "Love you too." Friday brought another message from the clinic. Marian was making lunch when her laptop chimed with a new email. The sender was the Center for Sexual Health and Recovery. The subject line read, "Important billing notice, Ava Holt." She opened the email. It was a notice about a billing resubmission. Ava's insurance had initially denied coverage for one of her sessions, and the clinic had resubmitted the claim with additional documentation. The notice explained the process and included the diagnosis code 302.81, spelled out in full: sexual compulsive disorder. Marian read the email twice. Then she took a screenshot, saved it, and added it to the folder. That was the moment she understood where the lines were. Church gossip was bad manners. It was hurtful and wrong, but it wasn't necessarily a legal violation. But publishing a diagnosis in subject lines and voicemails? That was different. That was a violation of privacy regulations. That crossed a line from careless to impermissible. She sat at the table and stared at the folder. It was thick now, maybe 40 pages. She had emails, screenshots, call logs, policy documents, and a detailed timeline. She had evidence of a pattern. She had proof. She picked up her phone and called Daniel at work. "Hey," he answered. "Everything okay?" "Yeah. I need to ask you something." "Go ahead." "If I wanted to file a formal complaint about the clinic's privacy practices, where would I start?" There was a pause. "You're serious?" "Yes." "Have you talked to Ava about it?" "Not yet. But I think she'd support it." "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about filing an internal complaint first. Then, if they don't respond, escalate to the state." "Do you need a lawyer?" "Maybe. Just for a consultation. I can ask around. I know a guy who does healthcare compliance work." "Want me to get his number?" "Yes." "Okay. I'll text it to you." "Thanks." "Marian?" "Yeah." "You sure about this?" "Yes." "Okay. I'll back you up." They hung up. 10 minutes later, Marian's phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. It contained a name, a phone number, and a short note: Gerald Proctor, healthcare compliance attorney. "I worked with him on an estate case a few years ago. He's good." Marian saved the contact and stared at it for a while. Then she called. A receptionist answered. "Proctor Legal, how may I help you?" "Hi. I'd like to schedule a consultation with Mr. Proctor." "Of course. What type of matter is this regarding?" "Healthcare privacy. HIPAA compliance." "Okay. Let me check his availability. How does next Thursday at 2 p.m. sound?" "That works." "Perfect. Can I get your name and contact information?" Marian gave her the details. The receptionist confirmed the appointment and explained that the consultation would last 1 hour and cost $250, payable in advance. Marian agreed and provided her credit card information over the phone. When she hung up, she felt a strange mix of calm and anticipation. She was taking action now. She was moving from documentation to strategy. She spent the rest of the day organizing the folder. She created 5 tabs: email, voicemail, vendor, group text, policy. Under each tab, she placed the relevant documents in chronological order. She added a table of contents at the front, listing each document by date and type. By evening, the folder was complete. It looked professional, thorough, and undeniable. That weekend passed quietly. Saturday was spent on household chores. Marian cleaned the bathrooms, did laundry, vacuumed the living room. Daniel worked in the yard, raking up dead leaves that had been hidden under the snow. They ordered pizza for dinner and watched a movie, something light and forgettable, just a way to pass the time. Sunday, they went back to church. They sat in the same pew. The same people smiled. But this time, the smiles felt more normal. No one stopped to ask overly personal questions. No one mentioned Ava. A man from the finance committee nodded at Daniel as he walked past. A woman from the choir waved at Marian from across the sanctuary. It was ordinary, and that was a relief. During the announcements, Reverend Thompson mentioned the upcoming Lenten season and the schedule for midweek services. He thanked the volunteers who had helped with a recent community outreach event. He did not mention prayer requests. He did not mention anyone by name. After the service, they walked to the car without being stopped. They drove home in comfortable silence. When they got there, Marian made tea and sat on the porch even though it was cold. The air was sharp and clean. The sky was gray. She sipped her tea and thought about the week ahead. She thought about her appointment with Gerald Proctor. She thought about what she would say, how she would present the evidence. She thought about what she wanted to achieve, not revenge exactly, but accountability. A correction. A boundary. Daniel came outside and sat beside her. cold out here, he said. Yeah. You okay? Yeah. Just thinking. About the appointment. Yeah. You'll do fine. You're prepared. I know. They sat together for a while, watching the street. A neighbor walked by with a dog. A car pulled into a driveway. The world went on, ordinary and indifferent. Monday morning, Marian woke with a sense of purpose. She had 5 days until her appointment with Gerald Proctor. She wanted to make sure she had everything she needed. She spent the morning reviewing the folder, checking for gaps, making sure every document was in order. Then she started drafting a summary. She opened a blank document and began typing. Summary of privacy concerns regarding Center for Sexual Health and Recovery. Background: my daughter, Ava Holt, was a patient at the Center for Sexual Health and Recovery from February 15 to February 23, 2022. During that time, the clinic and its vendor engaged in a pattern of communications that disclosed sensitive health information beyond what was necessary. Specific issues. Phone reminders that disclosed the service type, sex addiction therapy in live calls. Email subject lines from the scheduling vendor, BetterPath, that included phrases like sexual health services. Billing notices that spelled out the diagnosis code in full in the subject line. Policy violations. According to the clinic's own Notice of Privacy Practices, page 7, they are required to use only the minimum necessary information in appointment reminders, billing notices, and other communications. The communications described above violate this standard. Impact. These disclosures were visible to anyone who might have access to voicemails or email inboxes, including family members, coworkers, or others. The lack of discretion caused my daughter to switch providers. Requested actions. An acknowledgement that the communications violated the clinic's privacy policy. Implementation of neutral subject lines and voicemail scripts. Training for staff on minimum necessary standards. A formal apology addressed to my daughter. She saved the document and read it over several times, revising for clarity and tone. She wanted it to be firm but not emotional. Factual but not cold. By the time she finished, it was 2 pages long. She printed it and added it to the front of the folder. That afternoon, the archive file from Church Connect arrived. Marian received an email with a link to download the transcript. She clicked the link and saved the file, a PDF, 38 pages long, containing every post from the church's group text platform for the past 30 days. She opened the file and searched for Ava's name. She found the post from February 17th. It was on page 12. The text was exactly as she remembered. Please pray for ABA Holt, spelling, as she seeks help for addiction and personal struggles. Let's cover her in grace. The PDF included timestamps, usernames, and likes. It was a complete record. Marian printed the relevant pages and added them to the folder under the group text tab. Tuesday, she received an email from Diane at the clinic. The subject line read, Update on Communication Protocols. The email was brief. Hi Marian, I wanted to follow up on our conversation from last week. I spoke with our vendor, BetterPath, about the email subject lines. They explained that the templates are standardized across all their clients and can't be customized on a per-account basis. However, I've requested that they review their default settings for future updates. In the meantime, I've added a note to Ava's account requesting neutral language for all phone reminders. Please let me know if you have any other concerns. Best, Diane. Marian read the email twice. It was polite but non-committal. Diane was acknowledging the issue but not taking responsibility for it. She was passing the buck to the vendor. She was not offering a timeline or a concrete solution. Marian saved the email as a PDF and added it to the folder. She noted the date and time, February 22, 10:36 a.m. Then she typed a response. Hi Diane, thank you for the update. However, I'm concerned that the vendor's inability to customize templates does not excuse the clinic's responsibility to protect patient privacy. According to your Notice of Privacy Practices, you are required to use minimum necessary information in communications. The subject lines we discussed do not meet this standard. I would like to request a meeting with your privacy officer to discuss this matter further. Please provide their contact information. Thank you, Marian Holt. She sent the email and saved a copy. Wednesday passed without incident. Marian spent the day finishing her preparations for the consultation. She reviewed the folder one more time, made sure all the documents were in order, and rehearsed what she wanted to say. Thursday morning, she dressed carefully. She wore a navy blazer, a white blouse, and gray slacks, professional but not overly formal. She wanted to convey seriousness without seeming aggressive. She put the folder in a leather tote bag along with a notebook and a pen. The law office was in a low brick building near the courthouse, about 20 minutes from her house. She arrived 10 minutes early and sat in the waiting area, a small room with beige walls and a coffee table covered in legal magazines. At 2 p.m., a door opened and a man appeared. "Mrs. Holt." "Yes. I'm Gerald Proctor. Come on in." He was 57, with gray hair and reading glasses on a chain around his neck. He wore a dark blazer and no tie. His office was small but neat, with bookshelves lining one wall and a window that looked out onto the parking lot. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Please have a seat." Marian sat down and set the tote bag on the floor beside her. "So," Gerald said, settling into his chair. "Tell me what's going on." Marian reached into the bag and pulled out the folder. "It's all in here." She handed it to him. He opened it and began reading. He didn't speak for several minutes. He flipped through the tabs, pausing on the highlighted sections of the privacy policy, studying the timeline, and reading the emails. His expression was neutral but focused. Finally, he closed the folder and looked at her. "These subject lines are not okay," he said. "I thought so." "And the voicemail?" "Same issue." He nodded slowly. "The clinic has a duty to use minimum necessary information. They're clearly not doing that." "What about the church?" "That's trickier. Churches aren't covered entities under HIPAA, so they're not bound by the same rules. But if they're using health information in a solicitation context, like pairing a prayer request with a donation link, they might fall under consumer protection statutes. They do that. Then you have leverage." He leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. "Here's what I'd recommend. File an internal complaint with the clinic first. Request a restriction on communications for your daughter's account, neutral subject lines, email only, no voicemails. Give them a chance to fix it. If they don't respond or if the response is inadequate, file a complaint with the State Health Privacy Division. That will trigger an investigation." "What about the church?" "File separately with the State Attorney General's Consumer Protection Unit. Explain that a registered charitable organization is using personal health information in fundraising appeals without consent. Include the evidence, the emails, the group text, the donation links." "Will that go anywhere?" "Maybe. It depends on how the AG's office prioritizes it. But it sends a message." "What about the group text?" "Same consumer protection angle. If the church is circulating personal health details without consent, that's a problem." "How do I document all of this?" He gestured to the folder. "You already have. Just send certified letters and keep the receipts." "How long will this take?" "Months, probably. Maybe longer. But the clinic will respond quickly once they realize you're serious. They can't afford a state investigation." Marian nodded. "What should I expect from them?" "An apology. A corrective action plan. Maybe some financial compensation, waived fees, refunds, that kind of thing. They'll want to settle internally to avoid escalation. And if they don't, then you escalate. File with the state. Let them do the investigation. The state has teeth." They talked for another 15 minutes. Gerald answered her questions, clarified the process, and gave her a rough timeline. When they finished, he handed the folder back to her. "You did good work here," he said. "This is thorough." "Thank you. One more thing. You should request a full communication log from the clinic. Every email, every voicemail, every notice. They're required to provide it under HIPAA. It'll take them a few weeks, but it's worth having." "How do I request that?" "Send a letter to their privacy officer. Cite the right to access your records under 45 CFR 164.524. Be specific about what you want, dates, types of communications, everything." "Okay. Good luck, Mrs. Holt." "Thank you." She left the office and drove home. Her mind was buzzing with ideas, timelines, next steps. She felt more confident now. She had a plan. That evening, she told Daniel about the meeting. He said the subject lines are impermissible, she said. They were sitting at the dinner table, eating spaghetti. He said to file internally first, then escalate if needed. What's the first step? Write letters. One to the clinic's privacy officer. One to the state health department. One to the attorney general. One to the church board. When? Soon. I want to draft them carefully. Do you need help? Maybe with proofreading. I can do that. They finished dinner in comfortable silence. Marian felt a sense of purpose settling over her, a clarity she hadn't felt in weeks. Friday morning, she started drafting the letters. She worked at the dining table, her laptop open, the folder beside her. She wrote slowly, choosing each word carefully. She wanted the letters to be firm but not angry, clear but not accusatory. She wanted them to speak the language of policy and regulation, to anchor her complaints in the clinic's own rules. The first letter was to the clinic's privacy officer. The name and address were listed on the notice of privacy practices. Elaine Mercer, Privacy Officer, Center for Sexual Health and Recovery, followed by a street address. Marian began. Dear Ms. Mercer, I am writing to report a pattern of disclosures beyond the minimum necessary standard in communications related to my daughter's care at your clinic. She listed each incident, the phone call from Brenda, the vendor emails, the billing notice. She quoted the clinic's privacy policy back to them, page and paragraph. She included the dates, the times, the specific language used. Then she made her requests. I am requesting the following. A corrective action plan outlining how the clinic will ensure compliance with minimum necessary standards in all future communications. A formal apology addressed to my daughter, Ava Holt. A restriction on all future communications for her account, email only, neutral subject lines, no voicemails. A full communication log for her account, including all emails, voicemails, and billing notices sent between February 15 and February 28. Please respond in writing within 7 business days. I have enclosed copies of the relevant communications as exhibits. Sincerely, Marian Holt. She saved the letter and moved on to the second one. The second letter was to the Indiana State Department of Health, Privacy Division. She found the address on the state's website. The letter was shorter, 2 pages. It summarized the same facts and enclosed copies of the evidence. It requested a compliance review and asked for documentation of any corrective action taken by the clinic. The third letter was to the Indiana Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division. This one focused on the church. It explained how a registered charitable organization had circulated a specific person's health condition in a prayer request that included links to donation pages. It attached screenshots of the group text and the email chain. It noted that the organization routinely mixed personal details with fundraising appeals. It requested an investigation. The fourth letter was to the church board. Marian knew the board met on the 3rd Tuesday of every month. She wanted to send the letter with enough time for them to read it and respond before the next meeting. The letter was 1 page. It was calm and factual. It cited the church's own communications policy, which required permission before sharing personal details beyond the original recipient list. It asked for 2 things, a formal retraction sent through the same channels as the original message, and an update to the policy requiring consent before any health-related information was forwarded. She worked on the letters all day Friday and most of Saturday. She revised, proofread, and refined. She wanted them to be perfect. On Sunday, she showed the drafts to Daniel. He read them carefully, making small notes in the margins, a word change here, a clarification there. When he finished, he looked up. These are good, he said. You think so? Yeah, they're clear and professional. Not emotional. That's what I wanted. When are you sending them? Tomorrow. All at once. Yes. Certified mail. You're sure? Yes. He nodded. Okay, I'll back you up. Monday morning, March 7th, Marian went to the post office. She had printed 4 copies of each letter, 1 for each recipient and 1 for her file. She placed each letter in a large envelope with the recipient's address neatly typed on a label. Then she requested certified mail with return receipt for each one. The postal clerk processed the envelopes one by one, affixing the green certified stickers and printing the receipts. The total cost was $32. Marian paid with her credit card and took the receipts. When she got home, she filed the receipts in the folder under a new tab, Certified Mail. Then she updated her timeline. March 7. Sent 4 certified letters. To Elaine Mercer, Privacy Officer, Center for Sexual Health and Recovery. To the Indiana State Department of Health, Privacy Division. To the Indiana Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division. To Crossroads Community Church Board. All letters sent certified mail with return receipt requested. Then she sat at the kitchen table and waited. The first response came on Friday, March 11th at 6:43 p.m. Marian's phone rang. The number was private. She answered cautiously. "Hello." "Hi, is this Marian Holt?" a woman's voice asked. The voice was professional but tired. "Yes. This is Elaine Mercer from the Center for Sexual Health and Recovery. I'm the privacy officer. I received your letter. Thank you for calling. I wanted to reach out right away. First, I want to apologize. You're absolutely right. The subject lines and voicemails were impermissible. I appreciate that. I've reviewed your concerns with our compliance team, and we agree that we need to make changes. Here's what we're proposing: neutral subject lines for all appointment reminders, voicemail scripts that omit service types, and staff training on minimum necessary standards. We're also terminating our contract with BetterPath and switching to a vendor with better privacy controls. When will that happen? The vendor change will take about 30 days. The training starts next week. What about an external audit? There was a pause. We can arrange that. We'll bring in a third party to review our communication practices over the next 6 months. Good. We'd also like to offer some things to your daughter, Elaine continued. We'll waive all outstanding balances on her account, refund her copays for the sessions she attended, and provide a year of credit monitoring at no cost. Put it in writing. Of course. I'll send a letter to you and a separate apology letter to her. What's the best address for her? Marian gave her Ava's apartment address. Thank you, Elaine said. I also want to assure you that we're taking this seriously. This was a systemic issue, not just one person's mistake. We need to fix the system. I agree. Can I ask, are you planning to file a complaint with the state? I already have. There was a longer pause. I see. Well, we'll cooperate fully with any investigation. We want to make this right. I hope so. Thank you for bringing this to our attention, Mrs. Holt. We'll be in touch. They hung up. Marian sat at the kitchen table, staring at the phone. Her hands were shaking slightly. She set the phone down and took a slow breath. Then she opened her laptop and typed up a summary of the call: date, time, key points, Elaine's commitments. She saved it as clinic response and added it to the folder. Daniel came into the kitchen. Who is that? The clinic's privacy officer. And? They're apologizing. They're making changes. They're offering refunds and credit monitoring. That's good. Yeah. Are you satisfied? Not yet. I want to see it in writing. Fair enough. That weekend, Marian received 2 pieces of mail. The first was a letter from the Indiana State Department of Health. It was printed on official letterhead and signed by a compliance officer named Thomas Witt. The letter confirmed that an investigation had been opened based on her complaint. It stated that the clinic would be subject to monitoring for 1 year and that any findings would be documented in a public report. The letter included a line that Marian read 3 times. Thank you for bringing this matter to our attention. Privacy protections depend on individuals like you who hold providers accountable. She filed the letter under a new tab, State Response. The second piece of mail was an email from the church board chair, Robert Finch. The subject line read, Response to your letter. The message was brief. Dear Mrs. Holt, the board has reviewed your letter and agrees that the original prayer request was inappropriate. We will be issuing a retraction to the women's ministry list and updating our communications policy to require written consent before sharing personal health information. We apologize for the distress this caused your family. Sincerely, Robert Finch, Board Chair. Marian forwarded the email to Ava without comment. Then she printed it and added it to the folder. That evening, the church sent a second email. It went to the entire women's ministry list, the same list that had received the original prayer request. The subject line read, "Correction and Apology." The message was unsigned and formal. A recent prayer request shared personal health information without the individual's consent. This was a violation of our communications policy. We apologize for the breach. Going forward, all prayer requests involving personal details will require written permission before being shared. Donation links will no longer be included in messages containing health information. Marian read the email several times. It was adequate, not effusive, not deeply apologetic, but clear and direct. It acknowledged the mistake without naming anyone. It described the new policy. She forwarded it to Ava again. This time, Ava replied, "Good. Thank you." Monday, March 14th, Marian received a letter in the mail. It was from the clinic, addressed to her. The envelope was thick. She opened it and found 3 documents inside. The first was a letter from Elaine Mercer, dated March 11th. It reiterated the commitments Elaine had made on the phone: neutral subject lines, voicemail training, vendor change, external audit. It included a timeline for each action. It ended with, "We appreciate your diligence in holding us accountable." The second document was a corrective action plan, 3 pages long, printed on clinic letterhead. It outlined the specific steps the clinic would take: staff training modules, vendor contract termination, implementation of new communication protocols, and a 6-month external audit by a third-party compliance firm. Each step had a completion date. The third document was a check made out to Ava Holt for $380, the total of her copays from the 3 sessions she had attended. Marian set the check aside and focused on the letters. She read them carefully, checking each commitment against her original requests. Everything was there. She scanned all 3 documents and saved them to her documentation folder. Then she called Ava. "Hi, Mom." "Hi. I have some mail for you." "What kind?" "A letter from the clinic." "And a check." "A check. They refunded your copays." "Oh. Wow. Can I bring it by tonight?" "Yeah. Come over for dinner." That evening, Marian drove to Ava's apartment. It was a small 1-bedroom in a newer complex on the north side of the city. The building was clean and well-maintained, with a small courtyard and covered parking. Marian parked and walked to the 2nd floor, carrying the envelope with the clinic's letters and the check. Ava opened the door wearing jeans and a sweater. She looked tired but calm. "Hey, Mom." "Hey, sweetheart." They hugged briefly. Marian stepped inside and handed her the envelope. Ava opened it and read the letters in silence. When she finished, she looked up. "They really did all this because of your complaint?" "Yes. That's a lot. They violated your privacy. They needed to fix it." Ava set the letters on the counter. She looked at the check. $380. Your copays. "I didn't expect this. They wanted to make it right." Ava nodded slowly. "Thank you, Mom, for all of this. I don't think I could have done it." "You would have. But you didn't have to." They ate dinner together, pasta with marinara, salad, garlic bread. They talked about normal things: Ava's job, a project she was working on, a coworker who was driving her crazy. They didn't talk about the clinic or the church or the letters. It was a break, a moment of ordinary life. When Marian left, Ava walked her to the door. "This really helped," Ava said. "I feel like I can breathe again." "Good. That's what I wanted. I'll deposit the check tomorrow." "Okay. And Mom?" "Yeah. Thank you. Really. You're welcome." Marian drove home through the quiet streets. The night was clear and cold. The streetlights cast long shadows. She thought about the folder in her tote bag, now thicker and heavier, full of letters and policies and proof. She thought about how justice could be quiet if you built it carefully. When she got home, Daniel was reading in the living room. "How'd it go?" he asked. "Good." "She's relieved." "I bet." Marian sat down beside him. They sat together in comfortable silence, the only sound the ticking of the clock on the wall. The weeks that followed were quiet. Marian continued to receive updates from the clinic. In late March, they sent a letter confirming that the staff training had been completed. All front desk personnel, billing coordinators, and administrators had attended a 2-hour workshop on HIPAA compliance and minimum necessary standards. The letter included a copy of the training agenda and a list of attendees. In early April, they sent another letter confirming that the vendor change was complete. BetterPath had been replaced with a company called Secure Schedule, which used neutral subject lines by default. The letter included a sample email reminder, appointment scheduled for April 8 at 3 p.m. No service type. No clinic name. Just the essentials. In mid-April, they sent a final letter confirming that the external audit had begun. A third-party compliance firm called Healthcare Integrity Solutions had been contracted to review the clinic's communication practices over the next 6 months. The firm would submit a report in October. Marian filed each letter carefully. The folder was complete now, a record of the entire process from beginning to end. At church, the changes were more subtle, but equally real. The women's ministry list switched to blind copy for all messages. No more visible recipient fields. No more accidental disclosures. The group text platform implemented a new rule. All prayer requests involving personal health information had to be approved by the board before posting. No exceptions. Janet K. stopped attending the women's ministry meetings. Someone else took over the spreadsheet and the email list. No one made an announcement. No one asked questions. Life at the church simply continued, with slightly different routines. In late April, Marian received a letter from the Indiana Attorney General's office. It was brief, just 1 page. It confirmed that they were reviewing her complaint about the church. It noted that the church had already implemented policy changes and issued a retraction. It stated that no further action was necessary at this time, but that the matter would remain on file. Marian filed the letter. The case was effectively closed. By May, the routines had fully reset. Ava continued her therapy with the new provider. The sessions were going well. The reminders were discreet, just appointment and a time. No stress, no anxiety, no worry about who might see the message. Marian and Daniel went back to their normal lives. They attended church most Sundays. They sat in the same pew. They sang the same hymns. Everything felt ordinary again. One Sunday in mid-May, after the service, Beth stopped them near the door. "Marian, Daniel," she said warmly. "How have you been?" "Good," Marian said. "Busy." "I can imagine." "How's Ava?" "She's well. Got a promotion at work." "That's wonderful. Please tell her congratulations from me." "I will." Beth smiled and walked away. The conversation was normal. No veiled references. No performative sympathy. Just a simple exchange between acquaintances. In the car, Daniel said, "That felt different." It did. "Do you think it's over?" "Mostly." "What's left?" "Just waiting for the final audit report from the clinic." In June, Marian turned 53. They didn't celebrate with a party. Daniel took her to dinner at a steakhouse downtown. They ordered wine and dessert and lingered at the table long after the check came. Ava joined them. She wore a blue dress and looked happy, more relaxed than Marian had seen her in months. "To another year," Daniel said, raising his glass. "To another year," Marian echoed. Ava smiled and clinked her glass against theirs. "And to you, Mom. For everything. You don't need to keep thanking me." "I do. You changed things. I just documented them." "That's more than most people would do." They finished dinner and drove home. The night was warm. The sky was clear. Marian felt a sense of peace settling over her, a quiet satisfaction that came from knowing she had done what needed to be done. In July, Ava came over for a weekend visit. She arrived Saturday morning and stayed through Sunday evening. They cooked together, watched movies, and took a walk around the neighborhood. Cooper followed them everywhere, his tail wagging constantly. On Sunday afternoon, they sat on the porch steps. Ava had a cup of coffee in her hands. The air was warm but not oppressive. The street was quiet except for the occasional car passing. "How are things?" Marian asked. "Good. Really good." "Therapy still helping?" "Yeah. I feel like I'm making progress." "That's all you can ask for." Ava nodded. She sipped her coffee and looked out at the cul-de-sac. "Can this be fixed without a scene?" she asked quietly. Marian smiled. "It already was." "Really?" "Yes." Ava exhaled slowly. "Thank you." "You're welcome." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the world go by. In August, the church held its annual summer picnic. It was held at a local park, with grills and picnic tables and a playground for kids. Marian and Daniel attended. They brought potato salad and brownies. They set up at a table near the edge of the park, away from the main crowd. Janet was there, standing near the food table. She was talking to someone Marian didn't recognize. They made eye contact briefly. Janet's expression was uncertain. Marian nodded once, acknowledging her presence, but nothing more. Janet looked away. Later, Robert Finch came over to say hello. He was carrying a plate of food and a can of soda. "Marian, Daniel," he said. "Good to see you." "You too," Marian said. "Everything settled with the letters?" "Yes." "Good," he paused. "We learned a lot from that situation." "I'm glad. Policy changes are in place. We're being more careful now." "That's all I wanted." He nodded and walked away. The conversation lasted less than 2 minutes, but it was enough. In September, Ava started a new project at work. She called Marian to tell her about it. It was a big responsibility, managing a team of 12 people across 3 offices. She was nervous but excited. The promotion she had gotten in the spring had opened doors she hadn't expected. "How's therapy?" Marian asked. "Still going. Still helpful." "Good. Thanks again for everything, Mom." "You don't have to keep thanking me." "I know. But I do anyway." They talked for a few more minutes, then said goodbye. Marian hung up and looked out the window. The leaves were starting to turn. The air was cooler. Autumn is coming. In October, the final audit report arrived. It was a thick packet, maybe 20 pages, printed on the letterhead of Healthcare Integrity Solutions. It included a cover letter from Elaine Mercer and the full audit report. The cover letter was brief. "Dear Mrs. Holt, I am writing to inform you that the external audit of our communication practices has been completed. The attached report confirms that all corrective actions have been implemented and that our current practices meet HIPAA standards. Thank you again for your diligence in bringing these issues to our attention. Your feedback has made us a better organization. Sincerely, Elaine Mercer, Privacy Officer." Marian set the letter aside and read the audit report. It was detailed and thorough. It reviewed every aspect of the clinic's communication protocols, appointment reminders, billing notices, voicemail scripts, email templates. It included before and after comparisons. It documented the staff training. It confirmed that the vendor change had been successful. The final section was titled Conclusions and Recommendations. It read, "The Center for Sexual Health and Recovery has taken significant steps to address the privacy concerns raised in March 2022. All corrective actions have been completed. Current communication practices meet the minimum necessary standard as required by HIPAA. No further action is recommended at this time." Marian closed the report and sat back. It was done. The case was closed. The system had been corrected. She scanned the report and saved it to her documentation folder. Then she filed the hard copy in the manila folder, now nearly 2 inches thick. She carried the folder upstairs and placed it in the bottom drawer of her desk, next to the tax returns and insurance policies. She closed the drawer and locked it with a small brass key. Then she went back downstairs and made tea. That evening, she and Daniel took a walk. It was a cool October evening, the air crisp and clean. The leaves were falling, carpeting the sidewalks in shades of red and gold. They walked through the neighborhood in comfortable silence, past houses with lights on, past driveways with cars parked neatly, past yards with gardens preparing for winter. "Do you ever think about it?" Daniel asked. "The letters?" "Yeah, sometimes." "Any regrets?" "No." They walked in silence for a while, then turned back toward home. The porch light was on. Cooper was waiting by the door. In November, the state sent its final report. It was a formal letter on official letterhead, signed by the director of the Office for Civil Rights. It confirmed that the investigation had been completed. It stated that the findings substantiated the complaint. It listed the corrective actions taken by the clinic: staff training, vendor change, implementation of neutral communication protocols, external audit. It noted that the clinic would remain under monitoring for another 6 months. The letter included a closing paragraph that Marian read several times. This case demonstrates the importance of patient advocacy in maintaining privacy protections. The corrective actions taken by the Center for Sexual Health and Recovery will benefit not only your daughter, but all future patients. The word consent appeared 8 times in the 3-page document. Marian filed the letter under Final Report. That Thanksgiving, Ava came over for dinner. She arrived Wednesday evening and stayed through Friday afternoon. They cooked together: turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, pumpkin pie. The kitchen was warm and full of good smells. Cooper lay on his bed, watching them work, hoping for scraps. They ate Thursday afternoon, the 3 of them, at the dining table with candles and cloth napkins. The conversation was light. They talked about work, about travel plans for next year, about a book Ava had read. No one mentioned the clinic. No one mentioned the church. No one mentioned the letters. After dinner, they sat in the living room. Daniel turned on a football game. Ava curled up on the couch with her phone. Marian brought out coffee and pie. The room was warm and quiet. "This is nice," Ava said. "Yeah," Marian said. "It is." In December, the clinic sent a holiday card. It was generic, printed on glossy cardstock. It read, "Wishing you health and happiness in the new year." There was no return address. No personal note. Just a standard card. Marian set it on the counter and forgot about it. That evening, she sat on the porch steps with her tea. The air was cold. The street was dark except for the Christmas lights on a few houses. Cooper sat beside her, leaning against her leg. Daniel came outside wearing a jacket. "You're going to freeze out here." "I'm fine. Come inside soon." "I will." He went back inside, and Marian stayed where she was. She thought about the past year. She thought about the emails, the voicemails, the policies, the letters. She thought about the moment she had decided to collect instead of react, to document instead of shout. You learn, if you live long enough, that revenge can be a correction and not a spectacle. You learn that justice doesn't need an audience. You learn that the most effective power is the kind that shifts quietly, on paper, in compliance reports, in training modules, in retractions sent through the same channels as the original mistakes. She finished her tea and stood up. The dog followed her inside. The porch light stayed on, steady and bright. By the new year, everything had settled. The clinic's monitoring period continued into the spring. The church's new policy was embedded in practice. The group text threads were respectful and careful. Ava was thriving at work and continuing her therapy with reminders that said only appointment. Marian kept the binder in the drawer, locked but accessible. She didn't think about it often. But when she did, she felt no regret, no bitterness, no lingering anger. Just a quiet satisfaction that the systems had been corrected and the boundaries restored. In January, they took an evening walk. It was cold and clear. The stars were bright. They walked through the neighborhood, past houses with warm lights, past yards covered in snow. They didn't talk much. They just walked together in the quiet. When they got home, Marian made tea and sat in the living room. Daniel turned on the television. Ava texted to say she had made it home from a work trip. The dog curled up at Marian's feet. Everything was ordinary. Everything was fine. In February, the anniversary passed without ceremony. It had been 1 year since the first email. 1 year since the breach. 1 year since Marian had decided to collect, then decide. She didn't mark the date. She didn't revisit the binder. She just went about her day, errands, housework, a phone call with Ava, dinner with Daniel. That evening, she sat on the porch again. The snow was melting. The deck still needed staining. The streetlight cast a faint glow across the cul-de-sac. She thought about how some stories don't end with a bang. They end with a restored equilibrium, with systems corrected, with privacy intact. She thought about the sound of the kettle that first afternoon, that faint, steady tremor, and how she had chosen to document instead of react. She thought about her daughter, sitting on her own porch somewhere across town, drinking coffee with both hands around the cup, watching her own street wake up. She thought about how the morning sun would catch the rim of that cup, and how the world would keep turning, ordinary and whole. And she thought about how revenge, when done right, is not a spectacle. It is a correction. It is a restored boundary. It is a system held accountable. It is a folder in a drawer, a receipt saved, a policy quoted back to those who wrote it. It is silence after noise. It is calm after chaos. It is a porch light left on, steady and bright, while the night settles in. And it is enough. Every story here will stir your soul. Welcome to Spice and Sugar, your daily escape into real emotions, bold lives, and unforgettable lessons. Here, it's all about love, loss, laughter, and the quiet strength that carries us through. I share stories that make you feel, that remind you you're not alone, that every bitter moment can lead to something sweet. If you want to laugh, cry, and see life through stories that heal and inspire, subscribe and stay a while.